Welcome, everybody, to the Seattle Sports Union podcast. My name is Abraham DeWeese. I'm back again with Nathan Savage and the SouthWest Seahawk, Rob English. Guys, we got a game coming up here on Sunday against the Rams. They're 4-4. We're 4-4. The whole division's 4-4, it seems like, except for the darned 49ers. Have we ever seen anything like this? Like, where the entire division, it could go either way, like for any of these teams, I think.
Well, we haven't, I don't think we've seen it exactly like this, Abe. I think we've seen something, for me, it kind of calls back to back in the day when they used to call us the NFC Worst because we were all just really, every team in this division was just really no good. But that made it competitive because we just were no good. Like we, right. Amongst ourselves anyway, we were losing to everyone else out there in the league, but amongst ourselves, we were super competitive. I think it's a little bit different now because we actually are. Every team in this division now is, has the ability to go out there and win football games. But I think it's similar, but not the same.
What about you, Nathan? Have you ever seen anything like this before?
No, and maybe back before, in the Beastquake era, some of that, but
maybe that 7-9 season that we won.
Yeah, but a little bit of it, I will say, is just how insane the NFC North is this year, and the fact that we're playing them as well as some other tough teams. I think the Seahawks schedule so far is like the ninth most difficult schedule at this point, and then it's sixth most difficult after this for the rest of the season. So it could be a little bit of that for everyone in the division, where it's tough matchups this year. The roulette that is the NFL schedule has landed on a tough one for the Seahawks, and maybe that's part of what the division is facing this year.
Well, we've ratcheted up the difficulty level because it looks like there's no DK Metcalf for this upcoming games. How do we saw how the Seahawks performed last week without him. How are they going to perform this week without him?
I gotta say, I'm my expectations are low. I think, like I said, right after that, in our recap from that game, that was what our offense would look like without somebody who has just someone to make the defense think about him. I think you have a fearless defense playing against this Seattle offense, regardless of what team you're playing against, whatever team you're talking about. They have significantly less fear in them because number 14 is not on the field. That'll be no different against the Rams this week. It's really unfortunate because the Rams have been, you could almost say they've been hemorrhaging yards against the pass. So it would have been great to have DK out there this week. Hopefully the fact that the Rams haven't been very good against the pass as of late, maybe that will even us out a little bit and we can become effective. But DK not in the lineup makes it a hard case for us.
What do you think, Nathan?
Yeah, it's a tough one. I really was excited or hoping that the way they would turn around. I think a part of last week that wasn't really discussed was just how just terrible the run game was. How just maybe the most shut down I've seen the run game be in 10 years, it feels like.
We'll get to that in a minute.
Yeah.
I think what I'm looking is what no, there's no Noah Fant, there's no DK Metcalf, and to be honest, JSN and Jake Bobo, they didn't show up for us, did they?
Yeah, that's where I was hoping that there would be some type of matchup where you could shy away from them, but it seems like another one where they're going to just be so important to the game plan. The Rams are really good against the run. To beat them, like you said, it's going to be the pass, and maybe it was just really bad matchups. The Bills have pretty good secondary, so hopefully they can take advantage of it. But man, after last week, I also am lacking in confidence in some of these receivers.
Right on. Well, let's take a look at the other side of the other side, where we see the likes of Puka Nacua, who may be injured this weekend, by the way. Cooper Kupp and Matt Stafford, our old enemies. with our newly rebuilt defensive backfield, do you think we've got the horses to slow these guys down, or are we potentially in for a world of trouble if they just decide to run the ball and not go against our better part of the defense?
Yeah, I think the issue is not even so much against those Rams wide receivers. It's it's the it's the running back Kyron Williams
Yeah.
who's been killing teams, and which does not bode well for us. We've been hemorrhaging yards on the ground. If we were able to stop the run, I'd be way more confident in our ability to hold down Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua and the likes of those guys. But not being able to stop the run, that team's going to remain balanced. It's going to keep the Seattle defense honest, and I see them just walking up and down the field.
Well, that's pleasant. That's not great to hear, Rob. You're the homer. This is
you see me. See when I start talking like this, we got a problem.
Is there any hope, Nathan? Is there a different side to this?
I think I really think McVay is smoke screening Puka Nacua again. He did this exact same thing last week. Like, oh, he might play, might not. They felt like day before the game they activated him. He goes off for 100 yards on a snap count, and I think one quality that both Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua have when they're playing with Stafford is even against really strong secondaries, they still get their yards. So in this situation where our secondary, exactly like you're saying, is going to be forced to look up the field to try to block Kyron Williams, I think the back end is just going to be left open. And if those guys are healthy, that Rams offense looked really scary the last time they're out there. And I wish we were playing them 3 or 4 weeks ago when they seemed dead in the water, but it seems like the sleeping giant has woken up, and McVay is going to have a pretty solid game plan coming into this game.
Well, the one way to stop all this is to get a good pass rush. I watched the game last week. We all watched the game last week. I didn't see anything, guys, as far as getting pressure on Josh Allen. A whole lot of nothing. In fact, we had defensive linemen getting into fights over this. Where's that pass rush gone?
I think we've been so hot and cold. I think that we just went up against a good a good offensive line there. I don't want to say that we lost anything. I think we are who we think we are. That Buffalo offensive line is really good. And then that that little spat that was on the side with Jaron, was it Jaron Reed and Derek Hall or something like that?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, that was a frustration penalty. They were frustrated. There was plenty of things to be frustrated about. So that was a frustration penalty, not being able to get to the quarterback, almost getting there and just being too late. And then the play goes positive for the other team. And, I don't know that the pass rush is a forgotten thing or if it's gone. I think we'll see that come back, in coming weeks, hopefully this week. We just couldn't get home on Sunday versus Buffalo, but we're going to definitely need to, on Sunday versus, LA.
Is this pass rush working for you, Nathan?
I actually think we could see something more similar to the Atlanta game. I see a lot of similarities to the Atlanta team on offense versus this Rams team.
How so?
I think Josh Allen is the type of quarterback that just, pass rush or not, he just sneaks out, gets yards, even if it's 4 or 5 yards down the field or like a 15, 20-yard run. That's their strength. They have a really solid O-line, and then when there's the off chance that you're able to get to Josh Allen, he'll sneak out of the pocket, bounce off a couple tackles, and make positive plays. I see Stafford a lot like Cousins, where they're on the tail end of their career, had some injuries, not as mobile in the pocket, very susceptible to the pass rush. And then O-line wise, I think that was a big weakness of the Rams to start the year. It's gotten a little bit better, more cohesive, but I don't think it's on the same level, the elite level that the Bills offense is. And then with that Kyron Williams weapon in the backfield, it does actually remind me a lot of Bijan Robinson. They're Drake Londons or Mooney's, those kind of receivers like that. It's very similar, in my opinion, with where Cooper Kupp is at. And then if Nakua is healthy, I think that's a game breaker. I hope he's not 100% as a Seahawks fan, but that's the guy I'm most scared about is what Puka Nakua can do. But
Well,
on
let's
the offensive side, I'm looking at them more as an Atlanta Falcons, hopefully, than what we faced last week.
let me refrain. Well, not refrain. Let me reframe what you guys just said. So against the Bills, if I were to use different language, uh, there's a talent difference between their offensive line and our defensive line.
Oh yeah. Oh, I
It's fair
think so. It looked like men versus boys when I was watching the game. Just to be
Yeah.
fair, frank, and it, it was too bad, but it felt like whatever the O line wanted to do, they just pushed us around all game long in the Buffalo game.
The sad part is actually it was the same the other way on the other side of the ball too. We got no push
Yeah.
on the offensive line, and their defensive line just stood us up right there on the spot. We
Yeah.
got nothing. We talked about the trenches in that game, with it being a rain game, and we lost in the trenches.
Well, so let's stay on that. Let's stay on that there. The offensive line, uh, we we saw Stone Forsythe get replaced. I think he has the NFL lead for quarterback pressures. I think he had 35. Anthony Bradford's up there with 20. These guys are, as an offensive line, they're leading the league in pressures on Geno Smith. What can be done? I mean, like they've replaced Stone Forsythe, but as great as Mike, as promising as Mike Gerald was, he couldn't hold up to the Bills' pass rush. And we saw Christian Haynes come in for Anthony Bradford, but that didn't seem to do anything either. So again, is this another talent problem?
I think so. When you try to make lemonade out of lemons, it's I think it's what you're going to get. Sometimes it's going to look good, and then sometimes it's not going to, and a lot of times it's not going to look so good. I think this is going to be a situation where Seattle has to figure out a way to win on these downs, despite their shortcomings in the trenches. You got to. I don't know if you can live in and die by this, but rolling the quarterback out of the pocket, giving him an extra beat just by getting him out of the space, throwing the running back out of the backfield. I would say even maybe go. This sounds counterintuitive, but maybe start going a little more empty backfield and spreading that defense out a little bit. Make the defense not be able to send so many, at that front five for us, by spreading them out a little. Maybe that'll give us a little more opportunity. But we've got to come up with something to just give Geno another second in the pocket.
Right on. Is that all they need, Nathan? Just something a little different?
I do think this week it could just be not playing a contender to be Super Bowl champion. I think so many of those weaknesses, when the DN's a half a step slower, when the O-line is not quite as strong, or when the quarterback back there can't run a 4.40, 4.540, whatever Josh Allen ends up running. Some of those things do really make a difference, and I'm hoping more than anything, I think those holes are going to remain there, but I'm hoping this week at least the talent matches up a little bit better. To be honest, this week I'm more worried about getting out coached by McVay compared to last week, where I was just really worried about the Bills' talent as a Super Bowl contender. And I would say we're a lot more evenly matched, if not better, in a lot of positions, talent-wise, coming into this week.
This is a weird conversation to have. I mean, we were looking at a decade for the Seahawks where I don't think we were ever talking about like where the other team's got more talent than the Seahawks. It always seemed like we had the talent, and it's just a matter of could we get our act together, that kind of thing. It's a weird conversation to be having, guys.
Yeah, it's bizarro world, or
Yeah.
you know, Twilight Zone, because we get used to it so quick. I I'll be honest. During our time of success, in the back of my mind, I never lost sight of the fact that I knew that it was going to end at some point. You know what I mean? And I think that's what a lot of folks, certainly the newer Seahawk fan, has either forgot or just never even understood. Right? When your team is good, you're younger or never been a football fan really to begin with, and then you got this team that's doing great and everybody's all about it. So you start, and putting yourself in it. And then when that wave breaks and rolls back, now it's like, all right, well, I've got better things to do on Sunday. Like, no, guys like us, we're over here, losing our minds and being sad for weeks in a row because our team's not winning. You know
Right.
what I mean? So, but we've been there. We were there in the 90s when we were 2-14. We were there for those seasons. So, that's why I don't ever get I don't lose faith when we have down times like this because I know what bad times look like. So,
It's
but it is strange to see. It is unfortunate and it sucks, to be at the height, at the pinnacle, right, at the peak, and then to come back down again. But that's the beauty of the game. That's why we play, right?
it's weird. And I hate to be the guy that's going to jump on a rookie head coach. You got to give the guy 2 years, but here's where my mind is at. When the rational part of my brain's not working, which is often, I sit there and I contemplate like, okay, Pete Carroll and Mike Holmgren, those guys would always have the team up to the challenge. Now they may not win all the games, obviously, but like it felt like the intensity was there. And then I look at the game last week against the Bills. I look at the game against the Giants, and I'm like, is there anybody on the Seahawks that want to win? It just we had Geno Smith complaining and having DK Metcalf had to be the voice of reason to calm down Geno Smith. It just doesn't seem like there's a fire under these guys. It just
For me, I think that's one really, really underrated, or not even underrated. I think it's talked about a decent amount when we had Pete Carroll, and now that he's gone. I'm surprised it hasn't been talked about as often, but it was his ability to motivate our players, ability to turn our draft picks and develop them through his knowledge of football or just from sheer excitement for the game, whatever it is. But it was well talked about that when players played for Pete Carroll, they just played up and beyond what their expectations were coming in, and it felt like that would happen all the time. We'd bring players from other teams, they'd come here, they'd develop into studs. We'd draft picks that would get dropped by the wayside, fifth, sixth rounders, they'd become Hall of Famers or all pros. So I hope that happens again in the future, but I think that's one really underestimated aspect of the head coach, and one major strength of Pete Carroll is the players that played for him seem to really step up on game day and step up to the occasion. And even in particular, it seemed like quarterback, with the big circle around it, is those guys that played for Pete Carroll seem to just shine. And that either before they came and played with Pete Carroll or after, they seem to disappear. And I hope that doesn't continue. And I hope McDonald can build on some of that. But for right now, I feel like I'm seeing exactly what you're talking about, where when the game day starts, are these guys a team? Do they want to win? Like, what's going on here?
I feel like in most cases, there are some exceptions where teams have sustained success over a great period of time, and Seattle was one of those, right? But I think in most cases there just has to be that perfect storm that comes together just right at the just right time, and you look at the roster that Seattle had when we were at our very best, the very best Seahawk team. You look at the guys on that roster, the Cam Chancellors and the Richard Shermans, the Doug Baldwins, guys that were passed over and overlooked, right? For their respective positions, and they played with a chip on their shoulder. We had guys on this roster who had something to prove, You know what I mean? That because every one of them had a story about how they maybe felt like they should have been picked higher or considered higher or more or whatever the case may be. And then you sprinkle in those the veteran influence that we had with the Chris Clemens, and the guys like that, and the Mike Robinsons, Mike Rob, and it just came together so perfectly. Put a Russell Wilson in there, a guy who just is the he's the definition of want to, and that just happened to come together perfectly for that Seattle team in that era. And you don't get that very often, you know what I mean? You just don't, so we want that back so badly, and I think we have to just wait for our next time around.
The problem is, though, like, we did have it, it seemed, for about 20 years, with the homegrown. Take out a year. You can take out a year here and there, but it does seem like it seems like since 2000, see, homegrown got here in 02, 03, something like that. So it just seems like there was a person that's coaching the players, pushing the players, in different ways. They have complete control of the team, and I just wonder, and I wonder if Geno Smith has taken a hit to his star rating, whatever you want to call it, for fans in Seattle. I've been defending him a long time. I still defend him. I think he's still a good QB, but his talking about the fans not showing up for the game is that seems like a problem.
I feel like it's not the player's duty to speak on that, right? Like that's your job is to go out there and score touchdowns, right? Or make tackles, or do your job, based on the job description, right? There, what happens in the stands is a byproduct of what you're doing out there on the field. I don't know. I mean, to be fair, even when the Seahawks, when we were better, we for certain teams there was a good amount of of fans in the stadium for certain teams. But I think Geno is there's no need for players to speak on that. I don't think that's necessary. Boo birds in the stadium or cheers for other teams. Listen, you guys play a little better. You know what I mean? You don't really have to worry about that. You know what I mean? So I don't like the players really speaking on that so much.
Especially considering exactly what you said. You didn't give the fans anything to cheer for. There's got to be something, because at the game, there were a lot of Bills fans. Definitely a lot of Bills fans. But there were way more Seahawks fans.
Mm-hmm.
And those Seahawks fans, for a couple of plays, were really loud. Mm-hmm. It's just you can't go hiking the ball 20 feet over, Geno Smith's head, and you can't go 3 and out and expect fans to get motivated when you're down by 3 touchdowns.
Right.
I don't understand. I don't understand what, other than frustration, led him to talk about that. And I'm not sure why crowd noise is even in his head. What does that have to do with anything?
Right.
I hate to say coaching. It's so early, and I was such a big fan of the Ravens defense last year, but some of these topics, or some of these things the players are saying, or some of these things we're discussing, when it's not the Seahawks and when it's other teams with young coaches and new coaches, when we hear some of these conversations about having trouble buying in, or the players starting to blame the fans, or the players making these silly mental errors, very often I will say, oh, it's the coaching, when it continues and it seems universally through the lineup to be happening. And it's tough because it's still so early, and I really like Mike McDonald, but just kind of his demeanor. I don't know if it maybe doesn't match very well with this team or what is exactly going on, but it seems like a lot of loose cannons and not a lot of buy-in right now with the Seahawks.
Yeah. So I made a special point to focus on the inside linebacker this last week. Just want to get your guys' opinion on what you thought of Ernest Jones. He had a lot of tackles, but my experience, what I saw with my own two eyes, was in pass defense, he seemed out of place a lot.
Well, that's a continuation of what we were already seeing, right? So if if you replace the player, right, and you're still getting the same result, then I guess that does go to that at least lends itself to coaching, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now maybe we see some change as he gets more familiar with the system, and maybe we see something different. But it's certainly, at least after one single game, we're seeing the same results there as far as that coverage at the linebacker position. But you said he made a lot of tackles. He was in place, on rundowns. So I think it's the Seattle's problem is systemic. You know what I mean? It's not just one player here or one position there. It's a problem. It's a holistic issue. And I think it's just going to be some time for them to get it right. I think there will be times where it works perfectly, other times where it does not work so great. And at the end of the year, hopefully, if it works out that we end up with 10 wins, maybe we're in the playoffs, but it also could go the other way.
Nathan, any thought? Did you focus?
I think again, I actually thought he flashed a little bit when I was watching. It's just so tough against a juggernaut, like the way, I don't know if it's going to be the whole year, but the way they played, it just felt like it was a wave, and the Buffalo team was just, you know, just flooding over the whole field and dominating in every aspect. And it's so tough to tell in those games. How I think a new player like that is going to succeed in the long run. Again, I'm so excited for this week because I feel like it's a little bit better matchup of talent, and we're really going to get to see more of the coaching, and we're going to get to see in a more, I think about where our standing is, maybe fringe playoff contender or, you know, potential 500 team. I think this is exactly who we're matched up against this week, and it'll be interesting to see what Seahawks team showed up, because so far, at least this year, it seems like, outside maybe the New York game, but the teams that are not Super Bowl contenders, we play them pretty well.
Yeah. All right, we're getting towards the end of the show, but I got some news here. Chuck Knox and Mike Holmgren are finalists for the NFL Hall of Fame.
Wow.
Yeah, Mike Holmgren, of course, two-time Super Bowl champion, 161 wins. He was here with the Seahawks, took us in 2005 to the Super Bowl. And then, Chuck Knox, who was here in the 80s for the Seahawks, and I believe he's the only NFL head coach to take three different teams to the playoffs, if I have that right in my memory. And he has 186 wins. Yeah, what do we think about these guys getting some recognition? And
I love the fact that these guys, they're guys that are going to the Hall of Fame that had their time in Seattle. I mean, that's awesome. You know what I mean? We look back at great players in this game in the league over history. There's only a few who ever wore blue and green. And so I think it's awesome that Mike Holmgren, obviously he's probably going to be more his notoriety is more for his time in Green Bay probably. But he had a great run here in Seattle as well. Like I said, took it to the Super Bowl. Chuck Knox, forget about it, right? He's, I think people will argue he's one of the greatest coaches, maybe still the greatest Seahawk coach we've ever had. And, you got to factor in Pete Carroll, right? But Chuck Knox was I remember Chuck Knox was great, for this team. So yeah, I think it's awesome. I think it's just hopefully it gives us an opportunity to be on the map a little bit.
I never really thought about that, Rob. So I just did if I have my numbers right, the Seahawks have had 9, so McDonald would be the 9th head coach since 1977. That's not that many, to be honest.
Not a lot. Not like a lot of teams. A lot of teams have many coaches, right? So that's not a lot of coaches.
Nathan, your thoughts on the they're not inductees. I'm sorry, they're finalists for the Hall of
Yeah.
Fame.
For me, I just feel like that Holmgren Seahawks team isn't really talked enough, just because I guess they didn't finish the goal at the very end. But I feel like that was really the start of bringing this atmosphere to the Pacific Northwest, and having Hasselback with Holmgren was there during the Beastquake with Pete Carroll, and it felt like that bridge was so quick that we very quickly forget how successful that team was and go right into the Pete Carroll era and right into Legion of Boom. But yeah, I feel like this has been not just Pete Carroll, but Pete Carroll and Mike Holmgren has been a kind of era of dominance in the Pacific Northwest, and yeah, that I think he'll get in more, like you said, because of the Green Bay Super Bowls, but he's still front and center and spent a lot of time in Seattle, and that's very exciting for me.
Yeah, it's crazy. I don't know what else. I don't know why Holmgren's not in the Hall of Fame, to be honest. Like, what else do you want out of the guy? He's got 3 Super Bowl appearances, 1 win. He has a street named after him in Green Bay. A street named, he's in the Ring of Honor for the Seahawks. I mean, the guy's kind of done everything, and he's been successful everywhere. And he really, he pulled this team up out of just being another, another expansion team. He pulled them into relevancy, and with an iron fist, I think he made sure that the Seahawks were contenders more years than not. And I'm glad to see Chuck Knox get some play. I think there's such this emphasis on you got to win the Super Bowl, or else you don't mean anything. But that's really hard in team sports to win the championship. That doesn't make you chopped liver for not having won it. And I remember the Seahawks were laughing stock, in the early '80s and '70s, and they were the punchline to a lot of jokes. And he put an end to that. Well, until the '90s when we turned into a laughing stock again. All right, guys, we gotta wrap this up. Let's do our sorry, I was gonna say projections. We've already done that. Let's do let's do predictions. Thank you. Yes. Who wants to kick it off here?
Well, listen, I always pick the Seahawks. I really do try not to pick Seattle sometimes because I don't like coming off as the ultra homer. But you know what? I look at Vegas this week, and Vegas has the game as a pick'em. It's plus or minus 1. Seattle comes in as the underdog, but they're plus 1, so it's basically a pick'em. The game is the 3rd highest over under out of all the games on this weekend, so they're expecting some points to be scored. I'm gonna go ahead and say that this game ends up being what you have said for the last couple of weeks, Abe. Ends up being a shootout somehow, where there's going to be some plays that just break open. Maybe some busted coverages, what have you. Big plays in between defensive struggle. So I think it's going to go punt, big play, punt, big play. I think it's going to be something like that. I don't think it's going to be sustained drives so much this game. I'm going to say that Seattle comes out on top 34-28.
Nice. I'll go next here. I definitely think that the Seahawks are going to win. You guys texted me how on board you were with the Rams after their 30-point explosion last week, and I'm not buying it. I think that Puka Nacua is injured, and I hope it's not a swerve. No, I don't want to see him on the field. And I think their run defense isn't very good. And I think we have an opportunity if Grubb will just run the damn ball.
Yeah.
Give us some time of possession, Grubb. Just and also stretch the field. If the Seahawks can do that, they win. Run ball, stretch field. Defense on both sides, I think it's going to be subpar. So shootout, Seahawks 35, Rams 33.
All right. So for me, I think it's people are going to be a little bit surprised with the lack of firepower on both offenses, especially if Puka Nacua gets hurt. I think, all those guys coming back for the Rams shocked the league a little bit, but it's going to get dialed back again. And I think the Seahawks defense is going to step up while their offense is going to kind of sputter again as well without DK Metcalf. So I'm going to say the Seahawks win, but I'm going to go with 24-21, a little bit lower scoring of the game.
Okay. All right, we're at the end here, but let's do quick shout outs. I just need to do this one last time and give a shout out to Phil Mabry and the family and the friends who he was laid to rest today, and a pleasant afterlife for you, buddy. And I hope in the afterlife the Bears can finally win a Super Bowl and put you at peace.
I'm going to give my shout out to the Washington Redskins on that Hail Mary.
Commanders.
Yeah. Oh, the Commanders. Sorry, the Commanders. But did I shout them out last week?
Yes, you did
You
this
might
last
have
week.
for the Hail Mary, yeah.
Yeah, because you corrected me on the name of the team. I did that last week. You know what? So yeah, well, I'm gonna do it again. I'm gonna give it to him again because I still can't believe that. But I've been watching that play over and over again this whole week, and it's just unbelievable. You know what? I'm gonna give my shout out to the Bears defender who was standing over by the sideline talking crap to the fans, and then went over there and tipped the ball into the hand of the Commanders receiver's hands. I'm gonna give my shout out to him because man, what a bad way. What a bad way to go.
For me, in similar fashion, there's a similar player who kind of forgot where they were for a second and dropped a nice routine fly ball that led to a 5-run comeback in Game 5 and led to the Dodgers winning the World Series. So I'm going to shout out the Dodgers for, just having an amazing series and taking advantage of what we've started here in the media of a lot of lack of fundamentals or a lot of lack of practice that the Yankees were dealing with, and ending any hope of that evil empire making resurgence this year. So shout out the Dodgers for keeping the Yankees down where they belong.
Yeah, well, the Dodgers are the evil empire. They found a way to spend more money and everybody else. Good for them. Anyway, Thank you everybody for joining. Thank you for joining us on the Seattle Sports Union preview for the Seahawks versus the Rams this week. Check us out on YouTube as well. Check us out on social media at Seattle Sports U on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it, and as well check us out on Facebook. Like us and interact with us there. On behalf of Nathan Savage and the SouthWest Seahawk, Rob English, my name is Abraham DeWeese, and we'll see you guys next time.
Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.